Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Digital in Drinks 2021. This is a really exciting session. I'm really pleased to welcome an expert panel on today to discuss some of the opportunities that are coming up this year, and it's going to be really positive and uplifting. I know we don't always get that in these times, but this is going to be a great opportunity to look ahead and look at some exciting stuff. So I'm just going to kick off with a bit of background and some sort of examples of some interesting themes that are going on out there, and then I'm going to introduce the panel from there. So first of all, just to let you know who I am, I'm Jon Reay, founder and CEO of Rewrite Digital. And we're a strategic consultancy that helps drinks businesses keep the pace of digital change. And there's been quite a lot of that in the last year, and there will continue to be more coming up. So you can get in touch with me afterwards if you'd like to know a bit more about that. The hospitality industry in particular has been particularly badly hit in the last year. UK hospitality reports that the sort of takings in the last year have been less than half what they were in 2019. So it's sort of really sort of challenged that whole industry. But there is a members club trade that's doing some really great stuff to support that industry, and has sort of pivoted everything that they were doing physically to doing it digitally. So I just wanted to introduce Natalie Taylor, who's a group marketing manager at Trade, to just say a little bit about what they're doing and how digitization has and will continue to transform things for the hospitality industry. So Natalie, if you can go off mute.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thanks, Jon. Yes, so Trade Hospitality. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I
so yes, Trade Hospitality app was born during lockdown number 1. The idea very quickly became reality as a result of the pandemic, and we launched towards the end of last year. The Trade app itself, it's an all-encompassing kind of hospitality world. So as you can see here, we've got a perks category, so you can get discounts in clubs, complimentary drinks in venues for Trade app members. Obviously, sadly, we can't utilise them at the moment. But yeah, we're hoping to branch out nationwide this year, maybe even further afield. So you can search geographically, as you see here. We've got some wine and spirits brands on there who have also pivoted their business models with home deliveries and such this year. We've teamed up with some gyms like Virgin Gyms, some hotels, to launch our lifestyle category as well. So the news content of the app is updated every morning from top industry press partners, Harper's, Caterer, Decanter. So it's just so you've got all the hospitality industry news in one place. This is marketplace, so you could buy anything from secondhand restaurant furniture, bin end wines. We've even got a flat share so that you could find roommates who also work in the hospitality sector. Resources connects you to suppliers, charities, industry partners, as well as historical papers, podcasts, content to kind of scroll through. We've got industry job listings, which we'll be updating today. We've got some new sommelier posts and also hospitality events, sadly all virtual just now. So yeah, the Trade app, it's free to download. It's simply a tool to connect the industry. That's all we're trying to do. We have had a great response since launching. It's opened us up to many partnerships and conversations that we might not have been having had we not gone down this digital route. So I think it was the right path for us. it's a constant learning curve. We have to adapt every single day, but aren't we all just now? So yeah, please sign up to the app. It's free and enjoy it. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks Natalie, and yeah, we'll share the links to that afterwards, and maybe you can share in the chat as well, Natalie, if people want to download that. So that's just an example really of how digital is transforming things for the industry. The sort of opportunities coming up are huge really, and e-commerce underpins a lot of the change that we've seen, but it's very transactional, quite dull in many cases. But if we look to China, for example, this is Pin Duo Duo, which has some really nice features like social commerce and live streaming that just makes the whole shopping experience much more entertaining and exciting. And I think we're going to see more of this coming to Western markets over the course of this year and beyond, as e-commerce is sort of central to so much retail now. So this is an example here where you bring your friends in and you get group discounts if you all buy a product, for example. So it's sort of merging that whole social side with commerce. But thinking about hybrid models with the sort of decimation that we've been seeing in retail, lots of brands and retailers are looking to do interesting things here. So this is Situ Live, which is coming allegedly in spring this year to Westfield, London, which is a whole sort of experiential space with multiple brands involved, combining the sort of your mobile and digital experiences with a physical space, much more about entertainment and giving brands a platform to share what they're doing with people, rather than just being a very transactional space. So I think these sort of things are going to encourage more people to actually go shopping physically, but how we sort of combine physical and virtual is going to be a bit of a moving feast this year. We've obviously seen a lot of bars and restaurants and drinks producers and new startups do lots of interesting things to try and deliver experiences at home for people. So sort of cocktail in a bag or in a box is a very common thing now. This is put together by Yummy Pubs, which is a very small chain of pubs that has launched a cocktail at home service nationwide, expanded their footprint as a result, and are growing during these times. We've got new sort of entrants to the market doing different things. This is on the left. This is a 10-minute delivery service, Get Here, which is launching in London, launched last week, and is planning to expand to other UK hubs this year. I mean, a 10-minute service is almost as good as going to a shop yourself, and thinking about things like going into a bar and getting a pint. Can you get a pint delivered to your home in 10 minutes? Well, maybe if you live around the corner, but it's very sort of nascent at the moment, that type of experience. But things like Draft Drop are great at they deliver a reusable growler here, a bit like a milk bottle, with freshly poured draft beer on your doorstep. They don't do a 10-minute delivery slot, but that's something to come, I think. And there was a guy with too much time on his hands and craving the sort of social experience, who created his local pub in VR together with lots of friends, and had gatherings there and drank together, and danced and did games and that sort of stuff. So really trying to sort of capture and recreate that experience that that may have been lost. These kind of things are happening. We've got this sort of thing which came out at CES this year. There's always some sort of robot involved. So this is a robot at home that pours you a glass of wine, which is nice. Now, whether it chooses the right wine to open, depending on your mood, and the right time to open it, again, depending on things like homeschooling and other sort of distractions. I don't know, and I don't know how sort of real this is in most people's homes, but the idea of getting a drinking experience much richer than a cardboard box delivered to your house could be quite interesting, and be good to see how far this goes this year. This is from Fortnite, the game. So there's an island that you can go to, Party Royale, where there are gigs being streamed, movies being shown. You can go there, and this is deadmau5 doing a DJ set, and you can experience that with your friends and with other players, other dancers. So these kind of virtual experiences are becoming a bit more commonplace, and the role that drinks play in this could be an interesting one. And then screens, sort of touch screens in venues. I don't think people are quite so happy to go and touch screens at the moment. They still have them in a lot of shops and so on, but Ultraleap does sort of contactless technology, so that you can interact in midair and perform transactions and interactions with screens, or it doesn't have to be screens. It could be just a space, and I think this type of experience is going to open up a lot of really interesting experiential things this year. So there's lots to come, lots of exciting innovation, and during these times of crisis, this is where innovators really shine through. And I want to introduce now a few people to the panel who are doing just that. So today's panel, we have Will Harvey, who's Global Digital Innovation Manager at Diageo. And Diageo are doing lots of interesting things for their brands. If you don't know Diageo, it's the biggest drinks producer globally. Spirits brands like Gordon's and Smirnoff and Guinness, you'll be very familiar with. Andrew Morgan is an innovation leader who's performed a number of roles at ZX Ventures and part of AB InBev, the biggest beer producer in the world. And so you may have heard of Beer Hawk. So Andrew was behind some of the sort of innovations going on there. We've got Becki Stevens, who's marketing manager at Caleño. Caleño is a non-alcoholic spirit that is performing very well and is growing in its adoption. And some of the things that they're doing in digital is really interesting. And then we've got Ben Franks, who's founder and CEO of Novel Wines. Again, Novel Wines have been doing some interesting things in these times, and has launched a new service, which we're going to talk about in a second. So welcome to the panel. If you can all unmute yourselves, then we can hear you in a second. I'm just going to stop the presentation element. Right. Okay. So we've got a number of questions that have already been put together, but please add any further questions that you might have in the chat, and we'll pick those up over the course of the session today. I'm going to start with a question for each person on the panel, just to get their views on what we can look forward to this year from a digital perspective in the drinks industry. And I want really positive, inspiring answers here, rather than oh, it's not looking good. So I'll start with Andrew, if that's okay.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I think, there's the situation we've been put in has certainly, changed the perspective of what people think about hospitality and think about digital and how they interact with everything. I think it's kind of a bit like being in prison. We know as human beings that we kind of can go to prison and we hopefully come out and we'll be slightly changed, but our interaction with the world that has moved on or stayed the same, will alter. And I think you see people from all ages have been engaging with QR codes in a way that we would never have thought about like a year ago. And I think, it's quite exciting to look at how people have used digital over the last year to navigate through this, through online shopping that again people wouldn't have done, to look at the pressure on the systems that made delivery possible. I think it's an incredible. I mean, thank goodness, it wasn't just parcel force trying to get everything around to everybody in this last year. We've got a great delivery network, and I think it's really exciting to look at how people's interaction with the world through their phones and through everything else, is going to lead to opportunity in this next year in a way that, if this hadn't have happened, there's no way that we'd have the chance to consider many of the things that we are. So I think, overall, it has to be positive. It can only go up.
Excellent, very good. You did keep on the positive line.
I tried.
Will.
Yeah, I think we're all going to have a very similar kind of point of view in this area, but I think definitely the last year really felt the year of kind of disruption and despair of what's going on and what's going to look like in the future. Whilst I think this year it's a lot more positive, going, okay, this is a transformational change we're seeing. Like, I think that what has happened culturally and economically and behaviourally within the consumer landscape would have normally taken a 3 to 5 year behaviour shift for consumers to do. We talk about it in the industry, but for consumers to have this shift in such a short amount of time, over a 12-month period, it's fascinating to see what will stay around and what will stick and what will stay, and how is that going to evolve really for us, and what are the areas we should really be kind of putting ourselves and our attention into, and reviewing what is important for us as human beings and individuals, but also where do we want to have our role of technology here. It's lovely to see you guys all on a Zoom call, but it would also be lovely to be in the room with all of you guys. And I think that shift and where we're going to go back to post-COVID, when we start to see more of a positive kind of settlement of the kind of landscape post-COVID, is going to be a great opportunity for lots of businesses to really flourish and really explore those changes that would have, it's taken them a lot of kicking and screaming to kind of adapt to these changes. And it's great to see some of the amazing companies and the examples you were showing up front, how people are changing at such a quick net speed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's definitely no going back. It's kind of what's the next step, and what, as you say, what will stay, what will change, as hopefully things sort of open up a little bit more than they are now. Brilliant. Okay, Becki.
Hi, yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see how this year businesses can really use digital to amplify and kind of extend, I guess, to some respect, their events and their kind of experience. So I think one thing that we Caleño have noticed is actually how well digital events and that in-home occasion has kind of really amplified and obviously adapted over the last year. So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see how is the pub quiz going to be something that happens in venue and at home all at the same time? You know, how can kind of digital really start to sort of bring that, into people's homes as well?
Yeah, there's those hybrid events. That's the interesting one, and I know a lot of businesses have done, you know, elements of that between lockdowns, but going forward, you know, having a much more commonplace event model where you've got some people in a venue and some people not, and you've got more global reach and so on. That would be really interesting to see how that plays out. Great. Okay, and Ben, what does your crystal ball say for this year?
Well, I think, hello everyone, by the way. I think it's really exciting as an e-commerce business just because of the opportunity and the shifts online. But I think the best thing about what's happened is the access to different experiences and drinks and events across all areas and demographics of society. I mean, we've done lots of virtual tastings and had one customer, for example, share some portions out with their granddad who's self-isolating, never done a wine tasting in his life, and now he's got the opportunity to join in as a way of connecting with the rest of his family, and just get some of that experience and that storytelling to people that wouldn't have actually been introduced to wines, especially not the unusual wines we have before. And also the drive from that is now there's a demand amongst technologically poorer areas to invest and build up technological access and online access and things like that in those areas, and actually bring together a whole community and move away from this divisive point into a slightly more unified country around experience and excitement there. So when the pubs and things do open back up, hopefully there'll be a better social atmosphere and growth from the basis of that as well.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point about the sort of social cohesion and community elements coming back in, and I'll stick with you, Ben, just to sort of ask a little bit more about that sort of experience that you're creating here with virtual tastings, because this is it's an at-home experience, and do you and your customers see it as a sort of, you know, best we can do right now sort of experience compared to how it used to be, or is it actually fundamentally something new and has some real strengths to it that go beyond just a sort of, you know, half as good as what it used to be experience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was born out of necessity because we do about 300 plus tasting events a year as a company, and then in March last year they went from 300 to nothing, so we had to do something. But we've always tackled the fact that we find people drinking wine online, especially when you don't have the wine, quite boring. So we watched the market and how the virtual tasting experience was moving, and then decided to exclusively launch private tasting events, launch virtualtastings.co.uk, and basically left it to organically grow and bring it's kind of be formed by the customers we were having. We basically built it differently. So we had, you know, we shared people virtual maps. We could take people on videos. We could get them to meet the winemaker, which you can't do on a face-to-face tasting every time. And, you know, the distillers and all those sorts of people. Kind of bring the experience much more intimate. It was in their own home as well. And we were then tackling whether to do full bottles or, you know, decant into little vials and things like Palmal doing and stuff like that. But we ended up sending full bottles, and, you know, people would divide it with their neighbours or their community and things, and it worked really well. So I think it's testament that we're going to keep doing them even when things open back up, that it's got its own style and its own success, as well as, you know, you can't beat a face-to-face tasting for meeting new people, but if you're in your group and your family and your friends and your work colleagues and stuff, I think you can have the virtual at-home experience and get just as much from it and as much enjoyment from it. And we're doing, you know, in January, we're usually dead, but we've been doing, you know, up to 10 virtual tastings a week, every week, and sending wines out all over the UK. So, yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's been great, and getting people to try new products is quite a challenge when you've got this environment where, as you say, you know, do you send a full bottle or small vials? I mean, Will, in terms of the sort of, you know, brands that Diageo has and the distribution that you traditionally have through bars and pubs, you know, how are you looking at recreating experiences at home, or creating new types of experiences at home?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a really interesting one that we're seeing some ways that, at least with us, we are the kind of tech and innovation team within Diageo, areas that we've been experimenting, whether it's things like smaller serve types and miniatures, looking at how you do sampling in new and innovative ways. How do you get those products to the right demographic? Companies like Send Me a Sample via voice, or companies like Try It, also are great ways for you to be able to distribute smaller samples and getting those products into the right targeted hands rather than a generic overview. And I think that format of a home and that at-home occasion is definitely a really interesting area. We're seeing a whole new disruption of new business models that are being, like the examples you showed earlier on about getting delivery to the door and the kind of the next hour delivery. That's, for the drinks trade, is traditionally has been challenging to think about how do we do something, especially with some of the products we have in the more high-end spirit side of things. You won't get a vodka martini or a espresso martini at home the same quality as you would by one of our amazing bartenders in a bar in somewhere in Soho or somewhere up north. It's very difficult to replicate some of those existing experiences. I think it's about understanding how do you create new ones at home. Like, for example, we did our whiskey tasting experience with Talisker, where we recorded one of our amazing whiskey kind of distillers from the Isle of Skye, and we created an audio experience for you to sit at home using your Alexa or Google Soon to be able to hear from that person about the flavor notes and the experience, and bring that to the comfort of your living room with whether it's a sample or you've got a full bottle of Talisker. It's a great way to look at how you create something a little bit more meaningful and personable in those home experiences. There's so much happening in that space. It's been disrupted in so many different ways. It's it's very difficult to replicate what's going on. I think it's about understanding what's new and how will that stay around.
Yeah. No, that it's an ongoing challenge, but there's some really good examples there of how you've overcome that. Andrew, I know you were involved in a business with ZX Ventures that was about trying to create something for the at-home market. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. Beer Hawk Fresh was primarily a sort of distributor business, which obviously with COVID had to pivot, and we pivoted into Beer Hawk Now, which was to look to try and do a 1 hour delivery slot within London for working with partners, working with bars that again were challenged due to COVID, but ultimately are great distribution hubs that potentially were great distribution hubs to be able to, you know, use that network to get that hour delivery slot working. And you know, we sort of came into it knowing all of the historical pitfalls that were there. You know, we knew that Big Beer ABI had tried and essentially failed to get that ability to do this and make money, and that's what it comes down to. I think, you know, the amount of money it costs to team up with Uber or Deliveroo or any of those people really hits the margin, and ultimately the consumer doesn't want to feel that they're being really penalised for you know, for having that 1 hour service. That it needs to be seamless. And I think that's, you know, it's kind of trying to identify, I think, you know, with all the pivoting that's happened across COVID, across you know, many different businesses and industries, the fundamental thing has to be, is this valuable to the consumer? You know, are they fundamentally going to say, oh my God, this is something in my life that I really never knew I needed, but I've got it. And I think the at-home experience is obviously, it's, you know, everything else has been turned off, so the context is different than it would be otherwise. But I think actually, you know, for those of us that were working, living in London, or working, living in a big city, and going out 3-4 nights a week, going out to, you know, to a tasting event or this or that, it's knackering and takes a lot of time, you know. And I think the idea that you know, I had a fantastic experience with Brindisa, where I got to have a ham carving evening. And had I done that normally, I'd have been out for the whole evening. I'd have had to travel home late at night. I'd have probably drunk far too much. And actually being at home and, you know, being in my pajamas if I wanted to, just listening to these amazing guys talk about ham and show videos, and it felt like what I lost by not being physically there. I gained so much more by being able to have the freedom of not needing to physically be there. And I think that experience for me really translates so well across so many of the valuable digital based opportunities that are there, that will stay and will be valuable. And I think, in terms of the wine tastings, yeah, it's never going to be the same as being there with people. The smell, the shared experience. I think shared experience on Zoom is very hard, and I think all those conversations that you have with people that you meet for the first time, those happenstance things, again, you can't replicate that digitally. But for an efficient way to be able to do I could do 3 different tasting events of an evening if I wanted to, and not have to worry about traveling across London to get to them. So I think Beerhawk now ultimately, we couldn't get to the point where we could make it financially work due to just the costs involved, and also relying upon so many pieces of the chain. And I think the other, that then brings up direct to consumer and how that has revolutionized so many businesses during the last year. And all of that is just waiting to see how it can be merged back into normal life once everything reopens. But I don't think it's going to go away. I think, but also these places would never have done this stuff. I mean, again, working at ZX Ventures, we worked with ABI teams that would never have talked to us because they'd have been too busy doing the day-to-day stuff that was core to their role, pre-pandemic. Whereas actually everybody had to kind of take their blinkers off and be a little more open-minded. And that is absolutely been what the last year has been about. And I can't see that changing going forward.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you brought up the whole direct-to-consumer model there, and this has obviously been a huge shift, and it has a lot of impact. So as a producer, and I'd like to hear from Becki here about Caleño. You have a product that you have stocked in Sainsbury's and other retailers, but what's your sort of direct approach, and how do you see that evolving over this year?
Well, our direct approach definitely pivoted last March. It was something we, as a startup brand, we'd only been in the market for a year at the time, and when lockdown hit, D2C wasn't a huge part of our business. We were mainly retail. So for us, it was kind of, everything changed. We rebuilt our website to offer a much better user experience. And D2C has grown 300% for us over the last year. I think both lockdowns have just really, really helped grow our business, which is quite interesting, I think, from a non-alcoholic drinks point of view, just to kind of see that trend building over the last year. And I think obviously there's certain consumer behaviors and maybe sort of taking on healthier habits that's kind of helped that. But it's something that we as a brand will be continuing to grow over the next however long. And I think, to some respect, if COVID hadn't happened, would we have changed our model that way? I'm not sure.
And beyond the pure sort of transactional element of D2C and presumably higher margins, what else does that bring you in terms of that closer relationship with customers?
I think having the direct link with your customer obviously means that we're able to contact them directly as well, which I think has definitely helped. Again, from a non-alcoholic point of view, it's a category that is still kind of in its infancy, and there's a lot of education around how it's served, and can you make it in cocktails, do you have it with a mixer, etc. So that's kind of given us that access to educate the consumer about the product. But I think as we move on, and the plans are for us this year is to really start adding in that personalization piece to D2C, because I think there's so much potential in a consumer kind of wants to feel like they're the special ones, and they want to feel that every piece of communication they're getting from a brand is direct to them. It's not just a generic piece of content. So I think for us, that's kind of our plan this year, is to really start personalizing that experience when people are kind of visiting our website, or whether it's a sort of email that they receive.
Yeah, and personalization is a great theme. And Ben, I know you've done quite a bit of this, harnessing data that you have to find the right way to target your customers and help them with their wine choices and that sort of thing. Do you want to explain a bit about what you've done and what you see coming up?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we are primarily an online business. We opened our bricks and mortar shop in 2019 because everyone was demanding to come and see us because we were this faceless online company. You know, even that's done quite well to give us a bit of a local market we didn't have before. But the thing we always did as a smaller company was every single customer, we have their order history and everything, and we curate and suggest recommendations based on what they're drinking in the same way that Amazon does. That was all kind of done by us as manpower, if you like, during the early days, but now it's automated into the sense that it's based on the product rather than the customer. So each product, we now have a list of customers who've ordered it, and that means when that product comes back in stock, all of those customers in that data set can be emailed and notified. If something similar comes back in stock or is added to the list that wasn't there before, again, we have a list of all those customers who drink similar wines, and we can bring them in a pool and mail them or let them know that this new wine that they might like, that they've been drinking similar wines of, is now incoming. And then we have all the other tags and attributes for each customer. The people who are curious and try anything that's made from a great variety they've never recognized before, or from a very bizarre country that they didn't even know made wine. They'll get their curiosity emails and things. But we've also started now taking that and applying it to working with our businesses who are closed, because we started wholesaling in 2019 to restaurants and bars and pubs and hotels and things. And now going, look, we've got this information of the people who like these different things, but can we then work with Nibbles Cheesemonger in town and bring some of Nibbles cheese and give that out to our network in a tasting package? Can we work with Larkhall Butchers to put meats on? You know, and start actually working with these people who form our community, so that on the other side of lockdown, there's a stronger everyone working together kind of vibe. In fact, Cider is Wine, which is one of the startups that launched just before the pandemic, we did their entire distribution for them in 2020 and helped build up their e-commerce, and they're now going it alone from March this year. So we've kind of partnered on that, and in return, we've had a whole list of weird and wonderful ciders we can introduce to our customers as well. So kind of using all that data we built up from our 6,000 plus customers and creating these markets, not just for us, but for partners that strengthen the community as well, has been quite a perk of being an online business from the beginning, really.
Yeah, I mean, that idea of collaboration and finding ways to work with all elements of the supply chain is a theme we've heard a lot about, and I know Natalie will be, you know, very, very interested in ways in which sort of bars and restaurants can be looped in and involved in the whole sort of end-to-end experience here, and perhaps, you know, things like data are key to that you mentioned, Ben. I mean, if you look at data and sort of the power of data feeding into things like artificial intelligence, personalization, obviously we've heard about already. You know, are there examples that any of the panel have got about where this can go? We've seen AI being applied to creating new recipes for products, optimizing the sort of taste of products, or the selection of products, like that robot with the wine. And I know Diageo have done things like this with whiskey. You know, what do you guys see is coming up in this space, and really harnessing that data in new ways?
I can jump in a little bit, because yeah, if just to kind of feed in a little bit, as Jon mentioned, that we did a project recently called Watch Your Whiskey, which is an AI whiskey navigation tool. It's actually based off a technology that Diageo have been using for about 4 or 5 years in our R&D centre, looking at how we digitize tastes, how do you do something like that? It's just literally for the guys in the white lab coat somewhere. But they'd found and worked with this amazing Australian startup to look at how you can create data points around flavor profiles, and then using those flavor profiles, depending on how you answer 11 food-based questions, we can get a good 89% accuracy of knowing what is the right whiskey for you based off your flavor palette and profile of 50 data points, and then using that to dynamically change and then recommend it. And that's live now. But what's really interesting is an offset that we learned from doing this pilot and this project that we're scaling is that we've got a good chunk of whiskey portfolio inside of that, but learning about people's profiles and flavor palettes that we weren't expecting from a regional side of things is a really fascinating area. Learning about people's, maybe in Madrid there's a certain flavor profile that's really popular, or maybe in Singapore there's a certain flavor profile, and then thinking about how we as a business could potentially pivot and transform from new product innovation or launches or things like that, being able to know that seasonal and sort of regional flavor profiles are very different, like our preferences. How do we then maybe change our business model and change our sell-in way of looking at talking to those markets about, we learned that you like Crown Royal peach actually bizarrely in Madrid, so we should then try and think about how we distribute and fulfill those flavor profiles, and that's something that we just learn as an out product from this project. So I think looking at data in different ways and exploring is always an evolving environment that we've learned a lot from that project, really, and learning more and more every day.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a great example. Any others from the panel want to comment on its sort of enriching use of data?
I think it's interesting to look at, you know, if you're a brand owner and you're looking at the traditional bar setup to be your, in theory, you've got thousands of customers coming through every day, you know, that are making choices, but you've got no access to the data at all because the bar's not going to give it to you, and even if they did, you can't capture the details of the people with GDPR, etc. But I think that again, this D2C shift has enabled so many businesses from big to small to be able to have that conversation with a willing customer who actually now again we've had their attention for the last 9 months, almost a year, and I think overall most people have been quite satisfied with being in this area and actually finding it rewarding, and you know, the idea that when the postman comes, actually it's exciting. You know, that box that turns up should be exciting. If it's not, if it's no better than a supermarket trip, then you know why bother? But I think that, you know, in terms of data, I think it's really interesting. You know, it's what we do with it, and there'll be people who will really make the algorithms work to get to a point where, you know, consumers just feel loved. You know, they feel cared for. They feel like individuals in a sea of obviously they're not individual. We want to find we can't. None of us can make money out of tailoring everything to every single individual person, but finding those trends, and as you know, as marking before, finding an area and going, actually, let's target the marketing spend in this area on this product because we know from the D2C data that it should work. I think that is something, again, a year ago we'd never been able to do, because I think we're all slightly giving up on D2C. It felt like it was, you know, again, the consumer wasn't as engaged. Amazon were doing brilliantly, but we're all kind of struggling behind. But now small is beautiful. I think, you know, whether you're big or small, great potential to find those trends and to give solidity, give real confidence that is about, you know, planning for the future and where to invest in time, money, marketing, whatever product.
So you obviously bring us back to the consumer and delighting the consumer and bringing a great experience. Just going through some of the questions from people. Nicole Goodwin is asking about, from a consumer perspective, what 2 to 3 behaviours do we think are going to stay for the long term, versus those that have just sort of happened out of necessity. You know, so what's actually shifted that will continue to stay and evolve? Anyone from the panel? Yeah.
One thing we definitely have to be aware of as a small indie and small, you know, any small venue now, is that consumers expect choice and quite a wide breadth of choice to be delivered. They did so before, but now more than ever. I mean, we have all the customers we kind of won and were new during the pandemic were coming from wine society and bigger businesses that had closed or couldn't fulfill certain things. and they expect wines below a price point we didn't have, so we had to introduce those. So we've got those, and then we're pleasing the customers who are happy to spend in 10 to 20 quid that we had before. We also have fine wine customers who are looking for something new and expanding that as well. But also the addition of spirits and ciders and beers to our range this year. And I think even though people are shopping local and trying to support independence, they were used to the choices to have choice in supermarkets before, but now they want choice in online and in the drinks market more than ever. So even if you're a small venue, I think having or investing in a choice of products is very important now, and I don't think that's going to change.
Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, I think kind of like just in-home events are still going to be something that's going to sort of stick with people. I think the rise of social media and sort of likes of Instagram over the last year have obviously, you know, really escalated, and the options of sort of hosting live events and things like that through those platforms, you know, there are still going to be, I think, a certain element of people still wanting to have that entertainment, but maybe sitting on the sofa in their PJs kind of thing, instead of, like Andrew said, traveling across sort of London to get to these events. So I do think, although, you know, it'd be great when the doors are open and people can kind of get back out, I think, you know, like Ben said, people are going to want choice, and therefore having that sort of digital experience is still going to be something that's quite important.
Yeah, I mean, something that's touched on there, with more people staying at home, you know, being an ongoing thing, you know, even if they just go out less, but they still go out sometimes. You know, things like commuting and traveling less, it has a benefit for the environment. You know, sustainability is a massive sort of area. How do you feel that digital can play a role to really support sustainability objectives and you know, these kind of elements that quite rightly consumers are demanding very highly right now?
I think for me, it comes down to technology. And one of the things that's really challenged me with some of the experiences has been the poor quality of some of the video streams and some of the stuff that has literally stuttered when it comes to making those things work. But I think that the reality is that for people, there are some things that people are going to really be glad to go back to. And I think, you know, I've tried a few at-home pizza experiences, and no matter how much I try, I'm not going to get that wood oven crispiness that I'm craving once the pizza place is open again. But at the same time, you know, those at-home experiences that are that save you the trouble of having to go and physically turn up. I think, you know, live is so important, and I think this is, if we think about all the videos on YouTube of people showing you stuff, you know, it's there. But it's like watching old reruns of football matches you've never seen. You don't know the outcome. It might as well be live, but it's not live. And I think that element of, you know, being there with people in a community where, you know, I look down here and we've got 69 participants. I kind of feel like I'm connected to those 69 here. If I was watching it as a in a video in a couple of hours, it's academic. Whereas actually that excitement of feeling that that you are connected to people, I think is actually really quite valuable. And that's where wine tastings can work, and you know, virtual cinema screenings can work. I mean, Disney Plus doing, you know, watch it with your friends in different parts of the world and have that connection. Kind of, you feel like they're there. You know, it's more, it's notional, but it's not unimportant. And I think those are the little touch points that maybe aren't going to completely redefine it, but it's really important that we maintain a connection that feels relevant and live and interesting, and you know, is really efficient. I think it's, you know, these not having to travel, really efficient when it comes down to it. But how much compromise we're willing to have, I think it's, you know, it's the content, it's still got to be really relevant, and we're still tweaking that because you know, Zoom and whatever else, it's yeah, I'd be interested to see what technology is here in a year's time once this is really bedded in.
Yeah, and you know, what you're talking about is sort of capturing a much richer experience for people. because just a video or a Zoom on its own is not really enough. People are looking for more. They're looking for that social element, and maybe that is enough to say, yeah, I'm going to do more of that and less of sort of going to physical events. There are other elements of sustainability and sort of optimizing things and helping the environment that you guys think digital can play a role on this year?
I'm not sure if it's there yet, but I would say one of the actual problems or byproducts of everyone going D2C and this mass increase of experiences at home and things is we need to look at some kind of innovation in the distribution logistics side of drinks, because the amount of packaging we get through as a small company is quite obscene, to be fair. And if you have every small company in the UK doing the same thing and all the large companies doing it as well, there's a lot of packaging produce being sent up and down the country, binned, recycled, all that sort of stuff. That is a real problem. So I would say, as someone contributing to that, I would look forward to a solution or an innovation in that category, even if it comes down to, we've experimented before with offering a higher delivery price to consumers that would allow us to invest in more sustainable packaging solutions. But actually storing both types of packaging, because the take up of the higher price delivery was so low, was completely impractical as a small business to even carry on and experiment with in the short term. So we had to go back to what we were using because people want a very cheap, quick delivery price. So I would be very interested in what the trade and wider packaging companies can come up with to solve some of those issues, because I think in the short term it's going to be a significant problem we will have to tackle. Not to put a negative on this on the conversation, but I think it's a very important thing to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's good. A good shout, and I think things like the draft drop that I showed with the reusable growlers is something that helps. But is it scalable? And it doesn't. That doesn't work for wine in the same way, for example. So yeah, it's a good challenge for innovators. So we've only got about 5 minutes left, and there's a couple of key questions I just want to get through with the panel. So I'm going to ask each of you what the biggest change you expect to see this year in digital is for the industry. So I know some things will stay that have already changed and evolved somewhat, but what's really going to shift this year? Who wants to go first, or should I pick on one of you? Ben, you got a smile. You got something.
What's going to change is a good question. I think we'll see almost everyone offering a more experience-focused service in all areas. I think people and consumers, because they've got used to having more time, they'll look forward to new ways they can use it, and also ways to value how they use it as well. I'm sure when everything opens back up, we'll have waves of people who go back to the pub and support their local trade, which will be brilliant. But again, I think there'll be quite a significant, in order for that to continue, I think every venue up and down the country is going to have to invest in offering new experiences and giving people that choice and showing them that they can do different things. And also, because more people as well will be staying at home and looking for other things to do, because they've done plenty of reading and watching the telly for the past year, that there'll be a lot of space there for innovative companies to fill that time. So I think you'll see a lot of startups and a lot of innovation, especially in the small to mid companies, where they start delivering some of that. And hopefully that will be led by some of the research and development of the larger companies that the smaller guys can't afford. So, you know, there's some really inspirational things being done at a corporate level that help drive and create the innovation for the smaller companies as well. So experience would be my big thing.
Okay, great. Who wants to go next? Becki?
Yeah, I think I'm quite interested to see where VR can go this year. I think going back to what Ben was saying about experience, I think digital allows people to connect, whether they're down the road or whether they're, you know, across the country or globally. So I would be really interested to see how VR can kind of help bring that sort of more social connection together through digital. I think, you know, we've got platforms like Zoom and you know, social and things like that, which are I guess feel very well. Zoom definitely feels very business-like. That's because most of us are probably on it, you know, 8 hours a day. But I think just sort of how we can find that more personal connection through a screen is going to be a really interesting one.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and I hope to see a lot more in that space this year. Will?
I think there's a lot of change going on, but what I'm quite excited about is QR codes. Now, what I'm excited about is the kind of frictionless trade environment of what's going on there. I think to some of the points we've talked about today, that we've seen a real cultural shift because of things like track and trace and scannable media, and the idea of being able to finally kind of see that behavior where people are expecting an enhanced experience or a digital experience attached to their physical spaces. So whether that for the the on trade will benefit from this frictionless around booking and table ordering and being able to kind of give you more power and look at how you help those businesses then maybe bring up some of their tickets and upsell certain products within that on trade environment. But I think as a whole, looking at how we are expecting the merge of these physical and digital environments, whether it's VR, AR, these mixed reality technologies, how am I going to be able to attach a digital experience to my physical products that I'm giving to my consumer? And people are going to expect that more and more from scannable media. So I think that's an absolutely fascinating space, with everyone bringing out their own scannable codes from Pinterest to Facebook to Spotify. That's going to be a fascinating space to keep an eye on this year.
All right, yeah, good. Thanks, Will. Andrew?
I think for me, looking at the kind of pub and restaurant experience, if I never have to queue up to buy a pint again, I'll be a happy man. And I think Wetherspoon's taking the lead on that and having the at-table service revolutionized the way that we all went to pubs and got on with it. I think, the one-way systems and all that we can forget and we leave those behind. But if I can order and not have to go to the bar, and if I can pay and not have to wait for someone to sort me out at the end, this has almost all been worth it. I think it's those are efficiencies in my life that if I start thinking about how much during a week time I lose, if I can get that back and stay with the people on the table and remain social, restaurants will get their tables back quicker, customers will get served better. However, when it's done badly, it's appalling. And going to a restaurant and being given a QR code to scan to get a digital menu that to try and read on my little phone is impossible. Was one of the most dispiriting sides of using that. So I think there's so much to gain, but also so much to learn. And overall, I don't think we're going to go back to expecting to wait 15 minutes end of the meal to get your bill again.
Yeah, I think we can all hope that we don't have to do much more of that in the future. We are out of time, unfortunately, and I know there are some questions that we didn't get a chance to get through. We will capture them and try and get back to people. But this is all being recorded, and we're going to send out a recording to everybody who registered. I know a few people had to drop off early, but thank you so much for the panel, to Becki, Ben, Andrew and Will and Natalie for attending and sharing your thoughts and experiences. And we will be doing more of these, so look out for that. And thanks very much, everyone. See you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.